BaileyMarshall.com, the Republican candidate for governor.
Have sexual relations with
I realize that this is something he is
We're not going to be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
And he don't bet.
I don't bet.
Good morning, everybody. We're having a little fun here in the studio.
No, we're not.
Merry Christmas.
One of us is having fun. One of us thinks this is actually a really serious thing going on.
If we can get all you Republicans converted, everything's going to be okay.
Well, you're actually all of us Republicans. No. You were right the first time. You're absolutely right. You got a bunch of people that piled into the party, a hostile takeover, and the congratulations today actually should go to Franklin because you've probably handed the presidency to Hillary Clinton.
Well, John, you got to change your attitude. You got to get supportive.
Well, I get hung up on little things like facts. Like the fact is that he is the most negative rated presidential candidate in the history of.
Let me give you a fact.
Okay.
Did he win?
Yeah, he won. He won the primary.
Did you think he could win?
I hoped he couldn't win.
Well, you didn't think he could win the primary, and you don't think he can win the presidency.
No.
I think he can win the presidency.
Well, I'm glad you think that.
I think he'll do a good job.
You know, New York that he touted, he got 62%.
You know,
the Democrats voted 3 times as many people in New York State than he did.
You know, his well, that proves somebody's got to pull some of the Democrats across the line, right? And some of the racial. I mean,
good luck with that, Steve.
Okay.
Good luck with that. The Arkansas Democrat Senate candidate has already run an ad with a complete compilation of his ugly comments about women, tying it to the Republican candidate running against him. Already started.
Well, John, do you think that there's nothing going to be said about Hillary?
Well, let's put it this way. As ridiculous as the Ted Cruz's father was part of the JFK assassination it was, I can't wait for the Bill Clinton fathered a baby with the alien attack and how well that's going to work out.
Really?
According
From what
to
planet?
his buddy, the National Enquirer.
Oh, John was a little late getting here this morning, folks, so excuse us. We're just now getting up to speed to get on the air. Good morning, John.
How are you?
I'm good. How about you, Franklin?
Good morning.
See, listen to him. He's happy.
Hey,
Happy as can be.
I promise you, I'm so happy.
Well,
there
I'm
is
glad
nobody could beat Hillary but Trump.
Okay.
Remember that.
You keep telling yourself that.
Nobody can beat Hillary but Trump.
Okay.
He can officially start on her now.
Well, I hope y'all got your work clothes on. Because all of us horrible, evil establishment Republicans who were able to actually understand the relatively simple delegate process that nominated Abraham Lincoln and Ronald Reagan, we're also the people that did all the work. We put the signs up. We ran the rallies. We did the door-to-door knocking. We did the phone banking. So I hope all of the new Trump Republicans got their work clothes on, because it's hard to insult us the way he did and then turn around and say somehow it's on us to unify the party and be there to do all the work. By the way, he also has no fundraising apparatus at all in place. That's going to be a little bit of a problem come the general election.
Because you're not going to donate in.
I didn't say that. He has no apparatus, Steve. He's done nothing to get ready for it.
Okay.
That's not an easy thing to put. So once again,
John,
what will happen is he will turn around to people like me and he'll go, well, you all have all the expertise, so now it's your responsibility to fix this for me. Even though I've been a lazy candidate who hasn't put any fundraising apparatus together. All these other candidates that had dropped out, they already had fundraising networks put together, ready for the fall in case they won. Now, they didn't win. He won, but he's not ready.
You don't think he's ready?
No, he's not. See,
how do you know he's not ready?
Fact, because his people admit he's not ready.
Oh.
They have no fundraising capability put together. They have no organization. And he's already said he can't self-fund the campaign in the fall. So I hope all of you all have all your work clothes ready.
All of us, John.
All of y'all.
Us.
You wanted it, you got it.
Us.
It's like the dog that's chasing the car. You've caught the car.
It's us, John. It's us.
Why am I here?
John.
I'm the Admiral Stockdale.
I've been a Republican a long time. I voted Republican right down the line. And I'm going to tell you, nobody's getting anything done in Washington. That's why Trump wins.
Okay.
He's got a better chance of getting something done. The system is broken.
Okay.
All right, let's talk about some local stuff before we get back to this. Our city manager position, they're down to 5 now. I didn't see a local in there, but I'm going to bet you there'll be a local one considered before it's all over.
Well, there's no local in the recommendations.
I know, but
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I got to say, it's a pretty good group they put together to do the search committee on it, I thought. And I think they're going to be looking really hard at qualifications. And well, one of them had some Cleveland ties, actually, had lived here.
Right.
Well, he had lived here when he was younger.
Which one was that? Carrier?
He's an assistant city manager somewhere in Tennessee.
Somewhere in
Johnson
Tennessee.
City?
No, it's not the Johnson City one.
There's a Miss Carrier from Johnson City.
No, it's a young man. He had even done an internship at Olin. I think he said his father worked for Olin when he was younger. So he knew about Cleveland.
All right. Well, anyway,
but
that moves on. Hope.
But that's.
Well, I mean, I will say that the city commissioners or councilmen, they can put anybody they want up. So they certainly could go back into the big list and pull someone out if they wanted to. But let's say that you were a city council member and you didn't want to make any of the local people mad. The best way to do that is to form a committee that narrows your list down without worrying about whether city people are on it or not, local people are on it. And then you have that basically scapegoat to go, hey, this was the final list.
Actually, if I read the stories correctly earlier, no current employees in the city management structure over there submitted an application.
I thought the finance director did. Yeah, the finance director did.
I'm not sure.
Is that correct?
Yeah,
Sure.
the finance director did, I believe.
I think,
And I don't mean there's anything. What I mean is
submitted.
that's a tough position for an elected official to be in, to say no to a local person. So the committee, that's the whole point of a committee. A committee was supposed to be independent, look at the facts, look at the qualifications. They've done that. I think the council would have a hard time. Why'd you have the committee if you're going to override their short list?
We'll see. Bradley County Sheriff Eric Watson, hospitalized. Got, I guess, beat up on in a domestic assault in progress. He stopped to try to help someone.
Well, he saw it. I mean, this is actually a pretty good story for what you want out of a sheriff. He stopped and saw a domestic assault going on in a parking lot. He, from what I understand, tried to intervene in a very professional manner. The guy, I think, was intoxicated, became very belligerent, apparently pretty rough and tough guy. 2 other city officers responded. They were injured. I believe one of them got their nose broke.
This must have been a real tough guy.
Well, he did a lot of damage.
I think they called the guy, his new nickname is Mad Dog.
He's from down in Georgia, not a local boy.
Anyway, he's out on a $20,000 bond. I can't imagine just a $20,000 bond. And he's got several, he's had this happen several times. He's got a history of some of this kind of stuff.
I don't think he had any convictions, though. Yeah. I don't think he had any convictions.
I bet he does this time.
There would seem to be a lot of witnesses.
Yeah.
On 25th Street.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I think some bystanders came and jumped in and tried to help as well, because apparently the guy was pretty tough to take down.
He must be the guy must have been a huge guy. By the way, I saw Eric that same day and it invited him to come by food. And he told me that he might come by this morning, so I hope he does. But anyway, I'd like to get him in.
Well, I mean, one of the complaints we've had in the past, and I'm sure you hear it all over the country about a sheriff, is, well, the sheriff doesn't ever really do anything. He goes in there and sits in his office and, doesn't get his hands dirty. You've got a sheriff that saw something happen and jumped in.
That's right. That's what you're supposed to do. Of course, I don't know where the mace was. I'd have put some mace on him before I got too close to him, I think. But anyway, the guy evidently is a huge guy and must be pretty bad. Congratulations for Dr. Linda Cash. She told the members of the Bradley County Commission Education Committee Monday that New Lake Forest Middle School will be on time and on budget.
Well, that's not the whole story.
Tell me what.
No, I mean, she's done a great job. From what I understand, they had some costs that were higher than they really wanted, and she, from what I understand, went in and more or less told them, look, I'm ready to walk. I'm ready to go somewhere else if we can't get these costs down. And they turned around and included demolishing the other buildings and some of the site work. And from what I heard, the cost went from about $128 or $30 a square foot down to about $109 a square foot.
Well, let's give her a round of applause. What a great job.
Here.
Well, plus they've saved $800,000 out of the current, line item that they're going to be able to use for some other projects. If you look at this school board and the new director of schools, I'm not sure how you make an argument that there needs to be a lot of change on that school board.
But that's good. I'm telling you, I'm happy. Proud for it. Proud for our tax dollars.
Well, I mean, think about that. She's an education professional, I think, doing a great job with educating our children, but she also seems to have an understanding that the taxpayer pays these bills and that you have to treat that money the way you would treat your own money. And I think she's being a good steward.
Candies Creek Cherokee Elementary to be named of a new Cleveland school. Candies Creek Cherokee Elementary. How long before we get some Cherokee Indians protesting?
Probably soon.
Well, I wouldn't expect just the name of the school would cause that. I mean,
depends on what their mascot becomes.
If they have, a
What's their
Indian
mascot
caricature as a mascot, it may not work. But
what are they going to be? Candy cane or something? Candies Creek Cherokee Elementary. I mean, it's going to have to be Indian or something mascot, isn't it?
Well, that's become thin ice territory these days. That actually brings up I don't know if you all, I'm sure, are aware that ESPN fired Kurt Schilling over his apparently completely private, in his private time statement of his belief on the bathroom issue. Well, now
he actually blocked it. He posted it.
So,
well,
it's still his. I thought he had a First Amendment. As a lawyer, he does have a First Amendment right.
He does, but if we put our statements in public, then we're inviting the public's reaction.
I agree.
I would say,
and they're ESPN's private company, but you might want to look at this. ESPN edited. They had a documentary on the World Series, and in the sixth game, he had a bloody sock incident, which was a huge part of that series. And the documentary is about their comeback from how far down they were to win. And amazingly, ESPN edited his entire segment out of the documentary.
Who was someone was just talking about ESPN being such a liberal show that if you say anything that's not.
Well, apparently if you beat your wife or something, they can find a way to excuse that. But if you dare to be conservative and take the wrong position on the LBGT or whatever the moniker is now, bathroom issue, they will not only fire you, they'll excise you from history. They were covering all of the games, and the documentary now skips from Game 5 to Game 7. They just skipped completely over Game 6. By the way, he posted a picture of his ring and said, "For sale, never used, rarely worn ring from player who didn't actually have anything to do with getting it."
Speaking of rings and so forth, I went down to the Old Timers banquet last week at the Museum Center they held here in Cleveland. And I can't remember the athlete's name now, but they had one that brought a Heisman Trophy. I actually held a Heisman Trophy in my hand. That's amazing. That thing must weigh 100 pounds. It comes in a special carrying case.
A local person won that?
No. George, what's his name from South Carolina? Rogers.
Yes.
Brought his for the event.
He was here. There was some professional.
I was about to say, well, obviously I missed.
You missed that story,
some kind of story here.
Well, John Varnell, I think it was.
Yeah.
he does a lot of promotions, and evidently he invited them to come up to this with him. They're friends of his now.
Cool.
But it was pretty amazing. He also had a Super Bowl ring, and he had another ring that was just like a Super Bowl ring. It was
they're
a
big old heavy
championship ring.
rings, too.
Oh, he had two of them. I mean, it was amazing. Amazing. I want to talk about felons voting. What's the opinion of the felons voting?
Talking about the Virginia story?
Yeah, well, we'll start there.
Well, I think that the governor of that state did the right thing at the wrong time. He should not have done it in the middle of the election because it gives a message that it's intended to do that, and that might have been his motivation. I'm not saying otherwise, but I believe that once people have completed their sentences, all of their rights should be restored.
Well, let me ask you something. All fines paid and restitutions made, would that be part of it also?
It should.
It is for most places, although there are mechanisms in some cases where the fines are beyond any lawful means of paying them, and I don't know that ought to be the hang up.
Actually, Franklin actually hits at really the key to this, mechanisms. I disagree with him that I agree the timing was wrong, but I think what he did was wrong too from this standpoint, and even a former Democratic governor agrees. The mechanism for this is through individual case by case, and that's the way most states do this. That's the way people in Virginia had recommended that it be done. It also, most of these states that have this have done it through the legislature. So Terry McAuliffe, former Democratic National Committee chairman, former chairman of the Hillary Clinton campaign, he did this through an executive action all at once for 200,000 felons across the board. It should have been done through the legislature, and it should have been done on a case-by-case review, which is reasonable. Franklin's right on the principle.
I only have a minor difference with John on this. It's that I think that when you've completed the sentence, it ought to be automatic. I don't think you ought to have to go petition for it. We've imposed a penalty on somebody for their crime. We want them to become productive citizens. We want them to participate in our democracy in a serious way, and we shouldn't do things that make it any more difficult to do that once the sentence has been completed. That's my view.
I don't disagree with that. My point, though, is elections have consequences. Mm-hmm. And when you elect someone like Terry McAuliffe, as partisan as he is, and he had a history of being, let's just say he certainly has the Democrat Party in mind, this is what you get. Now, I will point out that Ken Cuccinelli was an extremely conservative Republican that ran against him, lost by only 3 points, and had more people like Donald Trump giving money to Ken Cuccinelli instead of Terry McAuliffe, who Donald Trump donated to. We might not be talking about this issue right now.
Well, I think that the restitution should be paid to the victims of crimes.
Well, I agree with you, but he is right. There are cases where someone they're making a point, and so they say, you will pay $500 million. Well, obviously, you have to have a mechanism to say, look, that guy's never going to pay $500 million.
Well, evidently, the guy did something really wrong, really bad wrong.
So maybe he doesn't deserve his voting right back.
Right.
That might be.
Let me give you an example. There are cases out there where somebody gets charged with 12 or 15 or 18 counts of something, all in the same incidents, and there's court costs and fines attached to each one of those counts, even though it was really the same conduct. And you can get to a situation where no one could lawfully ever pay that. Okay, maybe you think that ought to be a lifetime punishment, perhaps.
Well, let me
I say we have a societal interest in reintegrating those people into being productive members.
Well, let me roll off on that a little bit. That may actually be a good example of government taking care of itself. If all of that happens in the same court hearing, then to be perfectly honest, that's government seeing an opportunity to increase their money.
Well,
so that speaks to big government.
You're getting into an area where, we have some agreement, John, and that is that I think that we, in order to create the illusion we don't raise taxes and provide services, we increase fees and fines, and we do it in some cases to a point where we're making it impossible for people to actually learn from their lesson in return to being productive members of society, which is what really ought to be the goal.
But you do have to speak to what Steve's baseline concern is,
Sure.
is that you have a fine and let's say that you have, just like you say, there are egregious fines that are unpayable. There are also fines that are completely justifiable and deserved. And to give that guy his rights back when he hasn't fulfilled the court obligation to pay the victim is a wrong as well.
If you use the federal system, I mean, this is a common example, but there's a vast difference over the last 30 years in the amounts of fines for somebody who was caught with a felony amount of crack cocaine versus powdered cocaine. Well, interestingly enough, it was much more likely that somebody who had access to money was going to have the powdered cocaine than the person who had the crack cocaine. But the less affluent person is going to get a fine 5, 6, 7, 8 times more than the other one, to the point that you never could have paid it.
Well, I mean, I tend to agree that maybe these ought to be pretty much across the board, but I will point out, Franklin, that one of the reasons you saw those kind of run-ups in the crack cocaine is because crack cocaine had so many other things attached to it. Most of those powdered cocaine cases, while they're just as egregious, I agree, those people also weren't out killing all their neighbors, and they were holding a job down, and there wasn't the damage to society that you had from some of the rock cocaine.
You would be surprised how many of those people, though, were convicted of simply possessing significant amounts.
You know, there might be some agreement there.
Yeah. The point I'm just making is the criminal justice system, if your goal is revenue collection, the criminal justice system really isn't the best way to do it.
Well, government's goal is always revenue collection. The bigger government gets, the bigger it wants to get. And I will point out, Franklin, there was bipartisan agreement on some of these sentencing reform measures that you're talking about. But the president, as usual, poisoned the well by doing executive action and not allowing it to go through Congress. That's been one of the hallmarks of this presidency, is poisoning the well.
With all due respect, that happened 6 years into his administration. I don't know.
I'm sorry.
Why
the
they couldn't have
Constitution doesn't put a limit on
whether that's true or false, John, and we could argue about that. The point is, they had 6 years to handle this in a bipartisan way if that was going to happen. But the fact is, they weren't going to approve anything that this president did. Period.
Okay. So that justifies violating the Constitution and poisoning the well.
I don't agree with you that violates.
How do you just say, okay, 200,000, go vote?
Well, that's another problem. And
well, that's a Virginia state issue.
But that's
I don't
actually
know what
another
the law
problem.
is there.
They also say that on a practical level, it's going to be very, very difficult to actually make it work, even if you agreed it should work. That's why you've got Republicans and Democrats in Virginia saying this is a purely partisan move on Terry McAuliffe's part, and it looks bad, and it is bad.
I agree with that.
Now we're getting there. We're starting to agree.
But if he hadn't, been elected
watching
in the
you
first
two
place,
this morning has filled me with such a warm feeling that I find myself compelled to agree with John on several points.
His road is rosy now, so he's probably going to be happy for the next 6 months.
We're going to make you happy before it's over with, John.
No, I doubt it.
If Trump wins, will you be happy?
Well, then I'll just switch to worrying about which Trump actually will govern. The Trump that's pro-Second Amendment rights or the Trump that supports the assault weapons ban. The Trump that says 25% is a high enough tax rate, and the Trump that says 25% is way too low.
If you're going to vote for him, shouldn't you start saying something positive?
Yeah, Steve, let me give you a good example. All indications yesterday morning were that he was going to win, and probably win decisively in Indiana. And yet he goes on a morning news show and says that Rafael Cruz was involved in the assassination of JFK based on a rumor published on the front page of his good friend, the National Enquirer, who has endorsed him. That is a reckless, disconnected personality trait. And so I will vote for him, and I probably, when we get closer, I will end up trying to work for him. But it's a really, really tough road to slog, especially since his people have already started saying it's my responsibility and Ted Cruz's responsibility to repair the party. That coming from a candidacy who just 2 days ago said he didn't need any of us.
What's interesting is the number of well-known conservative activists who sent out messages yesterday that they would not be supporting him under any circumstances.
Oh, I know.
Well, now keep in mind, he's going to hit Hillary from the left, like on Iraq. He's going to hit her from the left that she voted to authorize the war in Iraq. And he's going to hit her from the left on the war on trade. Now, by the way, if you want an iPhone, go buy it before President Trump takes over, because when he puts his 30% tariff on Chinese goods, your iPhone's going to go up about 50%. You'll be paying that bill. So buy what you want now before the trade war starts.
We'll be making them here, though.
No, you won't.
Okay. We just won't have anything.
You'll pay more for it is what you'll have.
I think we'll be making.
All right. Well, yeah. He doesn't even make his own clothes here, Steve.
I think
Oh, he's going to fix that now.
Hardwicks might be making them for him in the future.
Okay. Why weren't they making them before if he's such a stalwart believer in American manufacturing?
Well, he's
what?
He's a businessman.
Oh, he's a businessman.
Okay.
So the rules apply only when they don't apply.
No, now he's in a position he can actually do something about it.
Okay. Well, it seems to me that someone like Alan Jones did something about it anyway. Alan Jones
He
bought
did.
an
He bought
American
Hardwick.
company.
He bought Hardwick.
So he had a principle, and he actually acted on it.
That's right.
Trump didn't.
Well, he saw that Trump was going to be able to pull it back to America, I believe. You think that?
No.
Oh, Lord, I tell you.
Well, I will say this is an interesting thing. He is the highest negative rated candidate ever nominated. And here's the interesting thing for me as a longtime supporter of the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. If we had nominated anyone else running, the highest nominated negative candidate in history would be Hillary Clinton. Mm-hmm. So they were on track to have that record, and we managed to nominate the one person with higher negatives than her.
Let's change the subject just a second.
I predict that there's actually going to be a conservative third-party candidate who runs.
Let's change the subject just for a second. What's Kasich doing right now? What do you think's going to happen?
We said all along, Kasich is delusional. He's delusional. He has been delusional. And matter of fact, if he'd gotten out 2 months ago or 3 months ago, you might be in a different position right now. I don't know that you would, but you might.
I thought it was good that Cruz did what he did last night.
Well, that's because, unlike Trump, Cruz is a decent person who does the right thing even when it's uncomfortable and unpleasant. That's why he went into Iowa and told them, I'm going to get rid of your ethanol subsidies. Everyone told him that's the wrong thing to say in Iowa. And he said, you know what, though? It's the right policy, and I'm going to say it anyway.
What happened to him in Washington?
He fought. People like you say he's a bad guy because everybody hates him. They hate him because he was one of the ones fighing in Washington.
The Republicans.
For the very things that you say you believe in.
From the Republicans.
Yes. He was actually fighting the establishment.
I'm just going to say it.
Frankly, probably
Donald
Trump
Trump is the natural outcome of 20 years of saying government can't do anything at all.
No, that's not true, because Donald Trump is actually a big government Republican.
He may be, but he's tapped into that vein. That's what he's campaigning
I disagree with you. Donald Trump is an outgrowth of the actual liberal movement over the years of empowering this anything goes. You can have whatever you want. I
watched. It really was fascinating. I'll give Ted Cruz a little credit. He had this confrontation day before yesterday with a Trump supporter who was protesting there. And it was clear that no matter what Cruz said,
it didn't matter.
It didn't matter. And it didn't matter what facts
now, frankly, I'm glad you brought that up.
It didn't matter at all.
I know, but let me tell you, that's sort of interesting. But the more interesting part of that is the way the media covered that. Because here's the point. I watched it, and I actually thought, wow, this is great. You know, Ted Cruz just nailed him. Well, then I turn on the TV, and Fox and all of them said it was horrible for Cruz because no matter what he said, and one of them said the Harvard debate champion, no matter what he said, he got back as good as he gave. And I'm looking at him going, now, every single thing that Ted Cruz said was factually correct. And the only comebacks these guys had were, you was born in Canada. No, he didn't. And at one point, Ted Cruz went, there's videotape of him saying this. And no, you are a liar. That's all they said. And so when our culture, the media was exalting this as a loss for Ted Cruz. When you wonder why an X and a Y chromosome don't say you're a man anymore, it's because we have moved away from the object belief in facts. We've moved to emotion. The left is the ones that put that, but Donald Trump very successfully used emotional arguments in place of factual arguments.
Do you think the establishment has a problem?
You mean the John Boehner who's texting buddies and golfing buddies with Donald Trump? That establishment?
No, I'm talking about the establishment. What is it?
Well, now, a few months ago, John Boehner was...
What's the group trying to get rid of Trump? Republicans?
Stop Trump.
Stop Trump.
Well, the Stop Trump movement is all kinds of people. The vast majority, the heart of that movement are people like me that are conservatives, that our objection to Trump is twofold. I'm embarrassed by the way he talks and the way he acts. It's embarrassing to me. You know, I didn't agree with John McCain on some really key issues, but I was proud of the fact that we had a war hero, someone who suffered in service to the country. I didn't consider him a loser, as Mr. Trump does. Mm-hmm. I didn't agree with Mitt Romney on a lot of the issues. He was more liberal than I am, but I appreciated a man whose father gave away every dime of his fortune, and everything that Mitt Romney had, he earned. And he earned it without declaring bankruptcies, without cheating people. So it's hard for me to look at someone like Donald Trump, even if he was a conservative. But on top of this, he's not a conservative. He's a liberal Democrat most of his life. And so it's a very tough slog for people like me as a conservative to be excited about this.
We'll be right back. Need to take a break.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
Whoop FM is your hometown oasis. WOOP LP Cleveland. Whoop Island. Radio 99.
Check into cash. The cash you need today is waiting for you at Check into Cash. It's your money, so come in and get it.
Get a payday advance today for up to $425. At Check into Cash, we make it quick, easy, and confidential.
The cash you need is right here, so stop worrying and stop in to Check into Cash today.
Borrowers often use payday advances over a period of months, which can be expensive. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Did you know that U.S. Money Shops cashes all checks, even the ones most check cashers reject? Tax refund checks, government checks, payroll checks, and many more. And when you cash a check with U.S. Money Shops, we'll give you 10% off your next purchase. At U.S. Money Shops, we have everything you need at a fraction of regular retail. So stop by to one of our 11 locations or visit us online at usmoneyshops.com.
Buy or sell or apply today. The better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Some restrictions may apply. See store for details.
If you need a little green, Lending Frog is making deals. He'll lend you cash on any kind of wheels. Borrow just a little, or you can borrow big. Lending Frog is a new financial gig. It's hip to hop into cash. LendingFrog.com is making a splash. Dig it, dig it. Dig it, dig it.
Hello, my name is Andy Figglestaller with Ed Jacobs & Associates. We are an employee benefit and insurance broker in business for the past 20 years. The new healthcare law, also known as Obamacare, has finally arrived. The law is complex and the choices are confusing. You have questions, we have the answers. It is our passion to find cost-effective solutions for every client. The solutions will be different for every person or business. Let our knowledge, experience, and passion go to work for you. Contact us today and let us assist you through this process. Our phone number is 423-473-0202, or you can find us on the web at edjacobs.com.
Yeah, you looking for something sweet? I know you are. Bring your little sweet self to the Village Bake Shop. Around since 1961, there ain't a baked good in the galaxy the Village Bake Shop can't whip up for you. So when you're ready to treat your mouth to a taste you won't soon forget, get over to the Village Bake Shop in the Village Green Town Center. Or give them a call at 476-5179. You dig?
Train Endurance Engineers are an elite group of extremely devoted individuals who stop at nothing to push our heating and cooling units to the brink. That way, when they pick up the pieces, they'll know exactly how to make the Train we install in your home even more reliable. Right now, their target is a Train AC unit.
Touch the control. Fire up the pitching machine.
Their methods may seem unconventional,
Okay, cue the jackhammers.
but it's because of their tireless efforts that it's hard to stop a Train.
When you want an unconventionally efficient heating and air unit that keeps your home right in the comfort zone day in and day out, nothing will do but a Train. To get the best Train service, call your local Train comfort specialist. Mechanical Systems, 336-5739. Keeping you comfortable is Mechanical Systems' only business, and they've been providing high-quality service and installations for more than 30 years. Mechanical Systems, 336-5739. That's 336-5739.
It's hard to stop a Train. Really hard.
No dealers allowed.
Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933, offering the best with over 70 styles of recliners, sofas, electronic lift chairs, full living room packages. Call Mike now at 961-7239 because Jackson Catnapper now offers sales to the public
Every Saturday. That's right. Every Saturday.
from 8 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. Or call Mike at 961-7239 or go see him
every Saturday
at 1911 King Edward Avenue, just across from the main plant. Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933. 961-7239.
No dealers allowed.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
What's running mate going to be?
Yeah, that's more interesting.
You know, General Mathis has already said, hell no, I don't want in any of this.
Are we back?
I mean,
are we on?
Daniel's trying to be sneaky on this. He likes.
You didn't say it very loudly.
He likes these halftime breaks we have. Oh, this ought to get your attention.
Hey,
right
I
here.
do want to correct something that we said earlier. That guy that the sheriff was involved in the assault with was out on $20,000 bond on the assault, but he was had a $500,000 bond on the sheriff's case.
Oh, that's more like it. Okay. Detroit Public Schools closed due to teacher sickouts.
Yep. That's SEIU Union, big Democrat.
The
ally.
mass sickout forced 94 Detroit public schools to be closed Monday.
I'm not supporting that, but the motivation there wasn't to get any big new benefits or anything. They wanted to guarantee they were actually going to get paid because they were about to go broke.
Yeah, but the point is that's a democratically run state, a democratically run city that is bankrupt, and now they want the legislature to raise taxes to pay for obligations that probably should have never been promised on the front end.
How are we going to fix situations like that, Franklin? How do you fix Detroit?
Well, Detroit is Detroit had a huge dependence on one industry. You've seen
the one that Obama saved.
Well, sure, but but that industry was in decline for 25 years before that.
Union,
because of the unions.
If you say so.
Well, Franklin, why were the plants shutting down and moving to right to work states in the South?
Here's what I can tell you: in 1965, Detroit was considered one of the top places to live in the whole country.
It was until the unions killed it.
They had unions in the 40s and 50s,
right?
All through them.
But power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I mean, I've always said this years and years ago. I said, how in the world can, this was back when I was in car sales when I was very young, and the price of these cars just kept going up, kept going up. And then I started thinking to myself, they were making $40 an hour, $50 an hour, stuff, and people around here were making $10, $11, $12, $15 an hour or something.
If they were lucky.
Yeah, if they were lucky. I thought, that just doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
Well, they also made for 15 years really bad cars.
Because they had no reason not to make
no,
a bad
they
car because
bet
they couldn't
wrong.
lose
They
their
bet
job.
They bet wrong.
No, Franklin, the unions put their contracts in place so you couldn't fire a bad worker. You couldn't let anybody go. That's the problem with this kind of mindset. It destroys any reason to be competitive. The Japanese came in here, kicked their butts, made a superior product at a cheaper price.
When the oil crisis happened in the early 70s, the American car companies did not respond to that.
Why is that?
They kept making big cars
Why?
instead of, well, which kind of car you make was not being decided by the union.
Franklin, the point
The fact,
is you
the
had
fact
a
is they were
company-
out of step with that. They made big bets and they were wrong.
You had a company that wasn't responsive to the marketplace because you had too many other influences involved. On top of the fact, Franklin, if you've got a union contract that says you can't fire people, you can't retask the people, and you can't cut their pay, you really don't have a whole lot of options as a company.
They simply made bad bets, and they had some bad management, too. That's just a fact. They teach courses on this in universities on how bad they were managed for a number of years. It's not that big a surprise.
Yeah, and part of that management was allowing the unions to run roughshod over them.
Well, I'm going back to my question. How do you fix Detroit?
You can't fix it. It's going to have to collapse. Now that's a disaster, and I'm not saying it's a good thing, but you can't fix this unless you just steal money like Obama did from the bondholders in GM, AC Delco. All the AC Delco employees, because they weren't union employees, they lost their pension and benefits in order to pay the union employees' pension and benefits under the Obama plan.
Well, you know, in Detroit, they had a problem even providing street lights.
They're out of money.
I mean, they're out of money. So,
but see, you had liberal
what are they
policies
doing
in place
to try
in
to
the
fix
police
it?
department as well. Detroit was the most violent big city in the country. Well, that who wants to come open up a business in a city where you can't be guaranteed your safety? So there were multiple layers of liberal progressive policies for decades that led to creating the worst city in the country. And that's what Detroit has become.
Do you think it's going to have to collapse before it can be fixed, Franklin? The school system's out of money. What do they do
when I
next?
say collapse, what I mean is somebody's going to suffer a loss. There's just no way around someone not suffering a loss.
How do you fix the school system right now? They're out of money.
Well, they're running out of money, 3.5 weeks before the end of the school year, which tells you there's a 3.5 week divide between revenues and expenditures there. So, yeah.
But by the same token, Franklin, there's tons of that school establishment that actually is paid on 12-month salary. So they may be out.
That may be, but it's a fiscal year. So,
but my point is, when's their fiscal year up?
I think the standard fiscal year is the way I understand
June or so.
Yeah. So the fear was they weren't going to get paid that month.
Right.
All right. President Obama's making a move on the smart guns right now. Opinions?
Well, I mean,
I'm sorry. I've never understood what the argument against
because they don't work.
Being able
it's
to
a
make
technology that doesn't work.
Well, let the market decide that. Instead of killing
wait a minute. I'm glad you said that. If you let the market decide it, smart guns are available. If it's a marketable thing, and if you actually believe what you just said, then Obama, all he has to do is stay out of it, and we'll buy it.
All
if it
I
works.
know is the number one touter manufacturer of this technology said he was virtually run out of business by opposition from the NRA.
Well, Franklin, why does the president need to mandate?
Why would that even be an issue? Is the question I have.
Franklin,
not that you have to buy a smart gun, but if somebody wants to manufacture them, why would that be a threat to somebody?
Look, Franklin, the government is getting involved now to force the issue. If it's just like solar energy. If the government wasn't involved, most people wouldn't be buying solar energy because it doesn't pay for itself. So you just made a statement which, quite frankly, I doubt you actually believe, because if you believed in the market, then if the NRA, a private organization, can run them out of business, then they don't have a very good product. If they had a good product, it wouldn't matter what the
I
NRA
don't know
did.
if that's true or not, John. I don't know
They're
what
a private.
the basis for that
What
statement
power
is.
does the NRA other than their voice? What power do they have? They can't close you down. They can't raise your price. That all of those things the government can do.
Smart guns are basically guns that work from fingerprints, things like that. In other words,
Actually, it's a print back here in your palm of your hand on the back of the thing. And the fact is, you can pull it up. Smart gun tests, they fail across the board.
Well, that's where I was going next, because I've got a phone.
I was going to say, my thumb works on here.
Sometimes it doesn't. Mine doesn't work very well.
Mine doesn't work at all.
Great, unless my hand's wet.
Well, guess what, Franklin? When I'm trying to Google eBay to see if some little thing I'm trying to buy doesn't come up when I put my thumb on it, I'm probably maybe a little aggravated, a little annoyed, but I'm not real broken up about it. But when I pick my gun up and the guy's 10 feet away from me and he's got an axe lifted up over his head about to split my head open, that's not the time I want to worry about whether my thumbprint will work or not.
Then you buy a different one.
That's what happened, and the company was going out of business,
That's
and
not
the
what
president
happened.
is now trying to mandate it because he wants to cram it down our
That's not what
throat.
happened. That's not what happened at all.
Well, what I'm trying to say is the technology for fingerprints on
it's
these
there. It can be perfected.
Well, it's not working now. My phone's not working. It doesn't work at
Mine
all.
does it all the time.
Huh? Well, I did too for a while, but it just quit working.
Franklin, did
That's
the
the problem with
government
your phone.
did the government mandate home computers?
What?
When Bill Gates started,
Nobody's mandating anything here, John.
the president's trying to. That's what he wants to do. My point is, you started this segment out that you believed in the market. So if this is a viable product, then the market will take off for it. If not, it won't.
No, the market got rigged is the problem.
Who rigged it?
The NRA did.
They're a private organization, Franklin. How
Yes.
do they rig it? How do they rig that? They're a private organization. They have no
Because
power
they
other than
flexed
their
their
voice.
muscles
So
to
what?
the point that
So
nobody
what?
could compete.
That's called the private market. Apparently,
say
you don't
so.
understand what the private market
If you
is.
say so, John.
They're a private organization in the private economy exercising their private opinion, and it worked. That's the private market.
Well, now the iPhone unlocking fingerprint is susceptible to the FBI search warrants. You agree with that?
I'm sorry, what now?
At the FBI, with your fingerprint iPhone,
It says it could be hacked, is what they're saying. Not that the government has access to it.
know that the FBI can issue a search warrant and force
Well,
you to
FBI
open your
can't
phone.
issue its own search warrants. A judge has to do that.
Well, all right. 2 FBI search warrants. That's the way this article reads. 2
Okay.
FBI search warrants.
Well, I mean, we've talked about that before. I personally think that if you can go to a judge and get a search warrant for a home, that you ought to be able to go to a judge and get a search warrant for the iPhone.
You don't think that's going against the Fifth Amendment, right?
No, I think the point here is, do you have a legal system in place? I don't think the FBI ought to be able to say, which is what Franklin's saying they can't, hey, we want to search your phone. They have to go to a court. They have to show evidence just like they would for any other search warrant.
I don't know. You know, if somebody wanted to search my phone, I don't know what they'd find. I mean,
I don't either.
Maybe I caught a crook somewhere.
Here's one of the things that's happening here. This is where reality is crashing down on some of the younger generation. The right to search your home's been there forever. And these kids have just never really thought about it. But now the culture has shifted and they do so much of their life on their phone that when someone says, hey, by the way, we can search your phone, and these kids know what's on their phones, they go, wait a minute, I don't like that. Well, guess what? That's been a standard for decades in the country. And it's just that the iPhone has forced them to focus on the fact that law enforcement through the court systems can come and look for nefarious activity.
Are women headed for the draft?
Absolutely. We said that from the start.
Franklin?
I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, if you want equality, that's equality.
I personally hope that that what comes out of that is a push for a 2-track system that's military service or national service. I have no problem with that. I've said it before.
We said that years ago when the Democrats pushed for this social engineering, that we want all these areas open to women. If you're going to want them all to be equal, they need to be equal in the responsibility, which is the draft.
I have no problem with that concept. I would like to see, obviously there are some people who are not cut out to be soldiers. There are people who are really cut out to be soldiers.
Well, a draft is a draft.
The draft is a draft. But
He's saying he wants to change the draft.
I'd like to have an option. People can, there's a military, it's like Israel. They have compulsory national service there, and they call it national military service, but not everybody goes into combat. They make decisions about
who makes, the individual or the government?
I don't know in their particular
So you're
case. I
talking
don't
about
know.
allowing the individual to decide. The problem with that is we're becoming a whiny pacifist nation. You might not have enough people to fill the army.
All I know is, well, I don't know about that because we've been doing it on a volunteer basis now.
Well, but you know what?
I'm just saying,
a lot of these volunteers are tired of getting shot at with horrible rules of engagement.
I personally think that the nation as a whole would be better off if everyone was required to invest in their country a little bit. Their personal activity as opposed to just their taxes.
When I was in Europe during the military, the Germans drafted their kids into the military right after high school.
Sure.
They spent 2 years, and then they went on to school and furthered their education. But it was mandatory for them to serve.
Well,
2
I do
years
think
military.
that if you did that, I think you might see some of these precious snowflakes on college campuses with a little more dose of reality, because military service forces you to understand that there's a real world out there full of hard facts.
Well, yes, it is. But I was pretty amazed. I saw all the German military moving around, and they were all, a lot of younger ones right out of high school and so forth, like I said. And it was pretty amazing to me they had to serve 2 years.
I would tend to agree with Franklin on the service idea. I don't think you can allow the individual to decide. I think you'd have to say, look, you've got to do service, and we will test you and, where you
When
test
I went in
best.
the military, they gave me tests. They thought I was a telephone man. I don't know where they got that. But
Sure.
I went in the
Understand.
Signal Corps.
There's all kinds of ways of doing that, but I just think that would be beneficial
But
for
here's
the
my
society.
point, though. Several years ago, good ways back, when the progressives were pushing for women in combat, women in submarines, we said that on the front end. We said, look, if you're going to go down this road, eventually what you're going to end up with is women being drafted. Now, that wasn't very palatable to the public. People don't like the idea of seeing their daughters forced into combat. And the Democrats, the progressives at that time, and this is what I've said all along, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Incrementalism. The liberal progressives at the time said, oh, no, we're not going to do a draft for women. Don't worry about that.
We aren't doing a draft for men either.
We
I
said
know.
at the time, yes, you will.
I
If
said
you're
we
gonna have
don't do one
equality-
now.
Well, but we didn't even make them sign up for selective service, and all men had to sign up for selective service, whether we have a draft or not. And at the time we said that, all of you good progressives tried to, oh, no, don't worry about your daughter. We're not going to ever get to that. Well, guess what? We're there. We're exactly where we said we'd be.
What do you think would happen if something happened to America and we were forced into a full-fledged war?
What do you mean?
I think the South would furnish a huge influx of people to begin with. You'd pick up a bunch out of the West. Eventually, if it was a World War II type of scenario, I think people would step up. But I think there's going to be a big learning curve, because we've become soft and spoiled, and we don't seem to understand that the world doesn't change. The technology, the way to kill people changes, but the will to kill people doesn't. And there are evil people in the world, evil forces in the world, and that's just a fact.
Hillary went up and got in West Virginia and tried to speak to the coal miners.
No, she had a forum in a restaurant and invited them in.
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
Did she?
Spoke directly with them.
Do you think that?
I think that, frankly, I think that's what politicians ought to do more of.
Well,
And they no, in a very respectful way. And I'll comment on the person who was talking to her. He very respectfully talked to her from a very important and emotional place in his heart. He was very serious and sincere about it. I thought her answers were serious answers, and there ought to be a lot more of that from every candidate.
Except for her
that.
answer where she claimed once again to be a victim, that it was taken out of context. You can pull the clip up. There was no context. She said, quote, "We are going to put a lot of coal miners and coal companies out of business." Fact of the matter.
Yeah.
She said, "Coal's bad. We're going to put you out of business." Now, at the
What's so
time,
bad about coal?
Well, as somebody pointed out, there aren't many coal miners out there who say they wish that life for their children down the road.
That's not the question. The question is what's wrong with coal.
I'm sorry, I was answering his question.
But that's not, you're not answering his question.
Yeah, I was.
It's a hard, dirty business, Franklin. We agree with that.
It's a hard, dirty business. It's an unsafe business. It's not good for the
So just stop it.
It's not good for the environment. It's not a sustainable technology long term.
Actually, we have 300 years worth of energy in coal in America. We are the Saudi Arabia of coal.
Does coal burn hotter than anything?
Yep.
So, what's your point?
It produces more energy. It's the
Okay.
highest efficiency.
It also releases more pollution.
And Franklin?
And there is no clean coal before you use that.
Actually,
thing.
there is
No,
cleaner
there's not.
coal, and
Cleaner
if
is
yes,
different.
there is cleaner coal, and if you continue to work on it, you can get cleaner and cleaner and cleaner coal. But if you just say we're going to abandon 300 years worth of energy supplies because of some ridiculous regulations,
When we've got 500 years worth of natural gas, we can.
well, you
use
all
it.
have attacked natural gas too.
No, we haven't. We've been pushing that.
How do we get most of our natural gas? Fracking. Who's
Okay.
attacking fracking? The same people that are attacking coal.
Really? Was that Hillary Clinton?
Yes, it was Hillary Clinton.
Really? She's been attacking fracking.
She's against fracking as well.
John?
She's attacking fracking.
With all due respect, Bernie Sanders has been pillorying her over the fact that she supported fracking. Get in the game here.
Franklin, I'm in the game.
That's just not even remotely
Hillary
close.
says
Now,
whatever
personally,
she
I
wants
think.
to say
Now, personally,
at the
I
group
think.
she's with.
Now, personally, I think that there's a lot to be looked at about fracking right now as to whether it's a good or a bad thing. We're seeing some evidence that there's some potential problems with it.
Oh, what could it be?
Well, when you start having Richter scale 4 earthquakes in areas who are doing it, that's a big deal.
How many coal plants is China building per week?
How many people are dying in China because of that?
Franklin, but the point
It's
is,
not
if you're talking
sustainable.
about- first off, global warming, eventually that's going to be the same embarrassment that the ice age in the 70s were. And by the way, it's the same people who were pushing the ice age in the 70s that are now pushing global warming today.
There's a reason why virtually every American corporation has embraced
Yes,
the
because of
concept
the culture
because they aren't trapped in this
No,
myth
Franklin,
that you guys
it's
live
because
in.
we have become a nation that is motivated by emotion and by the culture.
Corporations are
Facts don't
motivated by
matter.
emotion.
Yes,
now.
they are. They are. Absolutely.
That's
They're
a new
more
one.
concerned about being politically correct and being in line with the culture than they are about the facts.
Well, I think it's the way that the coal mining industry's been treated recently is pretty sad.
Well, the EPA, while President Obama couldn't get his cap and trade bill through Congress with his own Democrats, he couldn't get it through. So what he did was he used the EPA, and they have added $29 to $39 billion annually cost to our economy through their regulations.
Do you go along with that, Franklin?
Most of the regulations that have been passed actually don't go into effect until this year. So whatever's happened the last couple of years has not really been based upon those regulations. What has happened is foreign sources have become a lot cheaper, and there's been more competition from other types of energy.
Franklin, when the EPA says in 2017 you're going to have to do X and Y, a company that's looking at a plant that needs upgrades doesn't upgrade. So the idea that somehow the regulations haven't affected that's ridiculous.
No, it's not that. If you want to talk about a regulation that's really had an effect on them, is that we have passed a lot of regulations that require coal companies to clean up spent mines, and that's very expensive.
Yeah, let me throw a little caveat to that. The regulations for clean coal that the EPA passed, the scientists, even the scientists that support cleaner technologies, say they are fundamentally impossible right now. They set regulations that by current standards, current technology is not even possible. So that's why the coal companies have closed the plants, and that's why people all through Pennsylvania and West Virginia and Kentucky have lost their careers, lost their homes, lost their jobs. And Hillary Clinton has committed to continuing Barack Obama's assault on energy in America.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hate to say this, but time is about gone. And it was an exciting week. A lot happened. And I think going forward, a lot more will happen.
And you're giddy, aren't you?
And I'm just giddy. Bye-bye.
You've been listening.